Hello and welcome back to the Middle Age Gaming Podcast. On today's episode, we will be talking about exclusives and their place in the gaming sphere. But before we begin, Adam, would you like to give those of our non-gaming viewers a quick background on what you mean when we say exclusive?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. So, given that the term has meant a couple different things over time, especially in the last few years, originally an exclusive was a game that was basically only available on a platform. So, a great example of that might be like Mario, which you would only see on Nintendo, but you would not see it on the original Sega consoles, and currently we don't even see it on mobile. Recently, however, there has been kind of a new thing where people are referring to exclusives a little bit differently. A lot of times you'll see either the term console exclusive or a timed exclusive. A console exclusive is a game that is available on only one console, but is also available on the PC. So an example of this might be something like Halo, which you can play on the Xbox, but you cannot play it on PlayStation, but you can play it on PC. So that would be a console exclusive because it is only exclusive to consoles. Also, there's been a little bit of discrepancy recently in the fact that console exclusive, does that include games that are available on previous generations or only the most recent generations? So, for example, Horizon Forbidden West is available on PS4, but now it's also going to be, or is on PS5, but now it's also going to be on PS4. So is that a console exclusive because it's on two PlayStations, or is it a console exclusive because it's on PlayStation only? And then there's also the concept of a timed exclusive now, which is basically when a game comes out and it says that it will be on one console for a set period of time and then later on come to other consoles. So a good example of that might be something like Nier Automata, which was originally on the PlayStation only and then later came to the PC and the Xbox. So, Crian, would you like to take it from here?
Sure. Thank you for that quick history lesson. As I mentioned before, today we'll be talking about our opinions on exclusives. What are the pros, what are the cons, and are there any in particular that we feel are going to be a real system sellers as we move into the new generation? But we will get into that in a bit. As first, we'd like to take a short opportunity to talk about what we have been playing this week. Adam?
All right, so I have been playing Ghost of Tsushima. You might have seen my stream if you checked it out. However, basically, it is a game made by Sucker Punch, and that is one of PlayStation's exclusive studios. So this is a PlayStation exclusive game. I've actually really enjoyed it. I found it to be kind of the opposite side of the coin for Horizon Zero Dawn, in that Horizon Zero Dawn and Ghost of Tsushima have very similar control schemes. They have very similar exploration, very similar kind of the way the story progresses and the way you level up your character. However, Horizon Zero Dawn was primarily focused on ranged combat. So Aloy is very skilled with a bow. Basically, all your attacks are going to be, you're going to be coming into a situation, thinking about how should I deal with this, setting down traps, and then going in and attacking from range. Whereas Jin in Horizon Zero Dawn is a samurai, so actually his primary focus is going to be on melee, and you can either do that through stealth and assassination, or you can kind of do that as a direct attack in the traditional kind of samurai honorable one-on-one combat kind of deal. So it's very interesting to see how similar these games are, but how the gameplay, even though it feels very similar, it's actually quite different because you are approaching it in a very, very different way. So my thoughts on it so far is it's really good. They put a lot of love, you can tell, into the graphics. I made a comment where I'm walking through and you can just see the grass swaying in the wind. They have really good use of kind of making the game feel more immersive in the sense that you don't have so much of a HUD that you would normally have, a heads-up display. You have your life bar and you have these things called focus, but beyond that, the screen is basically bare. You don't have a compass, you don't have a mini map or anything like that. So in order to kind of guide you, normally you would have, like in Skyrim, you have a little notice on your compass. Here what they do is you can swipe up on the D-pad and it'll create a gust of wind that moves in the direction of your objective. So that's kind of an interesting way to kind of use the environment to kind of guide you so you don't get so lost. So who do I really think this game is for? I would have to say if you're the kind of person who likes action RPGs, games like The Witcher, Horizon Zero Dawn, maybe to a lesser extent, games like Fable and those kind of older ones, I think you'd really get a lot out of this game. It's a lot of fun. People who play games like Dark Souls and that sort of thing might get a lot of fun out of it too, because it does have that kind of melee aspect. There's a parrying, dodging, blocking. So it is much more in depth in terms of melee combat than Horizon Zero Dawn was. So yeah, if you're into that kind of game, I think you'd really enjoy it. Now, it's not a slower paced game. There is a lot of quick reaction speed. So if you're the kind of person that doesn't like those kind of twitchy games, it might not be quite for you. But if you do enjoy, that kind of Dark Soulsy action adventure kind of thing, I think it would be right up your alley. So we're gonna open up a section for questions here. So if Crian has any questions he'd like to ask. All right. That's a very good question. Maybe around 6 or so, 6 to 8, somewhere in that range, I would say. Um, okay, so there's 4 difficulty settings. There's basically an easy, normal, hard, and extreme mode. I'm playing on the normal mode. I haven't tested the other ones. Yeah, on normal, I would say it's maybe, for me, a 6 or a 7. It's a little bit harder than a lot of other games I've played straight up, and that's just because a lot of it is the Twitch speed kind of thing. And there is a lot of emphasis on parrying, so you do have to have really quick reaction time so that when they swing, you can block them. So for me, I've struggled a little bit with that. So for me, I would say a 6 or a 7. If you're the kind of person that plays like a Dark Souls game and you're really into these really extreme, or was it Bloodborne, then you'd probably see it more as like a 5, a pretty average kind of thing. But for me, who hasn't really played those kinds of games, I find it a little bit on the difficult side, even at medium setting. Oh, quite a few times. So yeah, so a lot of people that I've seen online kind of complain that the game does not have lock on. So a lot of these other games like Dark Souls have a lock on where you can lock onto an enemy and the camera focuses on them. Ghost of Tsushima does not have that, and the creators have said that that was a choice that they made because they wanted to kind of allow Jin to move freely between multiple enemies at the same time. So there have been several times where I'm being attacked by 3 guys and they're just coming at me from different angles, and I'm just trying to like pick them off one by one. So that's definitely happened a few times. The game, thankfully, if you do die, it just puts you right at the beginning of that fight again. If you're, say, storming a fortress or something like that. But if you do randomly encounter enemies in the wild and they kill you, you'll respawn at the beginning of that fight, but the enemies are gone. So you lose that opportunity for experience. But on the bright side, that means you're not just going to get killed over and over and over and over and over again. So yeah, I've definitely struggled a few times, specifically with the animals. Human enemies are not that bad, but the bears and the dogs are what really get me. So yeah. All right. So Crian, what have you been playing? That sounds really interesting. I know, like for instance, my wife and even I do, enjoy those like TLC or something. We'll have a lot of these like house flipping shows where people go in, they buy a house, they redecorate it, and then they resell it. So it seems like there's definitely a market for that sort of thing. I would have never thought to make that into a game though. Um, so yeah, so you said it's kind of like a Zen thing, kind of like Stardew Valley or Harvest Moon. Do you think it would be comparable to something as well as, say, like Roller Coaster Tycoon or SimCity in that sense? And like, do you actually customize the houses, or you're basically just kind of rebuilding on preset uh, bones, I guess? Okay, yeah, there's definitely a market for those Zen kind of games. So, all right. So on to our topic, I guess. All right. So, as you have guessed, today's topic is exclusives. We are giving you the exclusive on exclusives. So, what I'm going to be doing is discussing my point of view from a kind of console approach, and Cree is going to be going from a PC angle because when we say exclusives, they are actually quite different in the context of consoles versus in the context of PCs. So, anyway, to explain kind of how exclusives work in consoles, they're actually kind of a touchy subject, particularly among what we like to call fanboys, which admittedly, I am a bit myself. In all honesty, there have been times where I hear, "Oh, this game is coming for PlayStation," or back in the day, "Oh, this game is coming for Sega," and I'm like, oh, "Yes," super excited. And my friends on Nintendo or my friends on Xbox are like, "Oh," and I'm kind of internally laughing at them. Uh, so I'm definitely guilty of that, and vice versa, where they're getting a game and I'm like, oh no. Uh, but as I've grown older, I've definitely become much more sympathetic to my fellow gamers, and I definitely feel now that when I see a game that's an exclusive, I enjoy it, but I do kind of have a little bit of sadness inside where I'm like, oh, I wish somebody could share this. For example, when Horizon Zero Dawn came out, I talk about it all the time, and Crian's like, oh, that sounds so much fun. And I'm sitting there like, oh, I wish you could play, but you can't. So when they announced that it was coming for PC, I was actually very excited. I know some PlayStation people were probably like, no, but I was actually quite happy to hear that. So in the console sphere or environment, the purpose of an exclusive is basically to sell that console. So, for example, PlayStation will make an exclusive game for PlayStation specifically to encourage people to buy their hardware. Now, obviously, you could probably actually make more money if you sold it on multiple platforms because then you're making more sales. If I sell to 100 PlayStation people and 100 Xbox people, that's 200 sales. So you could definitely make more money on the game itself by having a multi-platform game. However, by having an exclusive, that forces people to buy your system or suggests that they should buy your system. And then once they're already in your ecosystem, all the other games they're buying are also going to be for that system because that's what they already have. So the real purpose of exclusive here is to encourage people to buy the hardware. That's its primary purpose. Now, however, so usually what they do is they have their own studios. For example, Sucker Punch belongs to PlayStation. So Ghost of Tsushima is a PlayStation property. Other games like Horizon Zero Dawn or Gravity Rush are the same thing. Halo is owned by Microsoft. And back then, Microsoft basically owned Bungie. Well, Bungie left Microsoft, but because Microsoft owned the rights to Halo, Halo has never been released on anything except for PC. So usually they use their own studios, but sometimes they also will buy already created studios or established studios, which is what we saw last week with Microsoft buying Bethesda. Bethesda is a pretty big company. It has reputation. So Microsoft knows if we buy Bethesda, we're not just buying the company and their games, we're also buying that reputation. So that's another way to do it. Now, this could be both good and bad. The pro side is this can mean a studio does not have to worry about financing. For example, when Bungie first created games, they created a game called Oni and Marathon, and then later on were bought out by Microsoft when they created Halo. And this can basically mean if you're funding yourself, basically each of your projects is going to be moving on and funding the next project. So you need to make sure that you're selling games really, really well. Now, if you belong to a bigger company like Microsoft, they're footing the bill, which gives you a lot more freedom into what you can do because you don't have to worry about financing. On the downside, though, this can often mean that you're not the one calling the shots. As we saw with, say, Bungie, after they left Microsoft, later on were bought out by Activision Blizzard, and Destiny came out, and there were a lot of complaints about things like microtransactions and that sort of thing. Most of those were not Bungie's decisions. Those were Activision's decisions telling Bungie, hey, you need to put this in your game. So you do lose a lot of artistic freedom when you do that. So that's a downside. So there's goods and bads. So when I was younger, I always would get really, really excited when I found out a game was coming for my console, as I said before. Now I've kind of changed, but there are a few exceptions in exclusives that I do kind of actually like, and I think that they're kind of a good thing. And those are, one of them is the multi-platform game that is a timed exclusive when the original was also an exclusive. And an example of that would be Final Fantasy VII Remake. Now, Final Fantasy VII released on the original PlayStation back in 1997. Once they got to, I think it was around Final Fantasy XIII, they went multi-platform. So you can start buying Final Fantasy games on the Xbox as well. So this expands their market. So going back, now they're doing Final Fantasy VII Remake. It is, again, a multi-platform game, so it will be on Xbox, but because the original Final Fantasy VII was on the PlayStation, they released it first on the PlayStation and gave them kind of this timed exclusive status. I think that's kind of a good way to kind of show appreciation to loyal fans of certain, our loyal companies and that sort of thing. So I think that's really good. That being said, the Final Fantasy VII Remake exclusivity is a year long. So I think that's probably a little bit too long. I think they probably should have gone with a month, especially in this post-COVID world where everybody's at home. So, what was the old statute of limitations on a spoiler? Like, what, a month? Now it's basically 2 weeks. So if you haven't played this game for a year, it's really hard to avoid spoilers for a year. So I think they probably should have shortened it, maybe a month, maybe 2 at most. But I think it was probably a bit too long. But I do like the thought. However, Final Fantasy XVI, which is going to be a brand new game in the franchise, is also going to be PlayStation exclusive. That one I don't so much approve of because it has no history on PlayStation. It's just a new game, so I really think everybody should be able to enjoy it at the same time. The other thing that I think is good about exclusives is when they do console-specific kind of treats, I guess you could call them. So an example of this would be like Soul Calibur 3, which released on the PlayStation 2 and the Nintendo GameCube and the Xbox. And the game was identical for all 3 systems, with the exception of each console had its own character added into the game. So for instance, Nintendo had Link from The Legend of Zelda as a playable character. I think that's really cool that you can add something that has this Nintendo flavor, and it would make sense that you wouldn't be allowed to have Link on different consoles. So I think having that was kind of cool. You know, PlayStation got I don't remember his name. I think it's Hihachi or whatever from Tekken. Sorry, Xbox got Spawn, which didn't make a lot of sense. They should have gotten Master Chief. But I think that kind of idea is kind of a cool little nod to the console. And it's kind of fun. An example of how I think this is done really badly, though, would be Destiny, giving PlayStation users special weapons that are available to them and do not become available to PC or Xbox until much later, which at that point, usually they've had a couple expansions and those weapons aren't really viable. So it's kind of like, yeah, you can have it, but why would you want expansions and those weapons aren't really viable? I don't think Destiny's approach is the correct way to do it. However, I understand why they did it, and that's because PlayStation just threw a bunch of money at it. So, but there are definitely some advantages to console exclusives. So one of them is parity. Okay, one of the reasons that people would argue consoles over PCs are always more powerful, but consoles are always consistent in their power, which means that if I am playing on a PlayStation and you're playing on a PlayStation, there's not really this competition of my PlayStation's better than your PlayStation, which if you have that on PC, that's definitely a thing. I have a better graphics card, I have a better processor, I can process the game faster at a higher resolution so I can see you from further away because I can see you more clearly. And I can see you faster because my frame rates are better. On consoles, you don't have that. So having an exclusive thing, because especially in this upcoming generation, Xbox and PlayStation are really going for different things. PlayStation is really going for those faster load times. Xbox is really going for those higher teraflops. So if we're loading into a game and I can load the game faster than you can, that might give me a slight advantage. So making that PlayStation only would make that fair. So I think that's a good thing. The other thing that I really like is when they take advantage of peripherals, okay? Nintendo is kind of the king of this. We've seen this with the Wiimote. We've seen this with the Switch fitness ring, okay? They take their controls and they're able to create a game that you just frankly couldn't do on another console. You couldn't take that fitness ring and put it on a PlayStation. It doesn't really work as well because the PlayStation controller doesn't come apart in the way a Switch controller does. So I think that's really great. Another example is Ghost of Tsushima on the PlayStation has good use of the D-pad, where depending on which direction you swipe, you effectively get 4 additional buttons, plus the D-pad itself, which is a 5th button. So you can do a lot of things like that, or a game like Okami, where you're drawing with the D-pad, or I demonstrated in Final Fantasy XIV, where the D-pad can kind of act as a tracking pad on a laptop. And Xbox even has their own. They haven't done it in a while, but the Kinect on the Xbox 360 had voice recognition. So in a game like Skyrim, where part of your spells are basically shouting out words in the Draconic language, okay? So if you shout out, force in the Draconic language, it creates kind of a shockwave. They're basically shouting out functionality to the Kinect words in the Draconic language, shouting at my screen, okay? So casting spells based on what I'm shouting out. So I don't have to use buttons. So I think exclusives that take advantage of what this system can do are also really, really great. There are some things that I really hate, though. And that's basically when a game is jumping between consoles. Probably the worst offender that I've ever known for this is Monster Hunter, which came out originally on the PlayStation and then went to, the NDS, and then they were on Switch, and then they went to Monster Hunter World came back out on PlayStation and Xbox, and now they're doing another Monster Hunter, which is going back on Nintendo. So I really don't like it when franchises do that, because if I like a franchise, I want to be able to enjoy everything on it. Kingdom Hearts is another thing like this, where the original 2 were on PlayStation 2, and then they jumped over to Nintendo. So all the PlayStation fans are now missing a good chunk of the story. All the Nintendo fans are missing the whole beginning of the story. The only way to get the whole story is to buy both consoles. So I don't really like that. And then, as I said before, I don't like exclusive content in multi-platform games like Destiny. So, Crian, would you like to fill us in on the PC side of things? I think it depends on who you're talking about. I think that Nintendo is probably going to definitely continue with the exclusives. That's kind of where they shine. A lot of people don't really like the third-party offerings on the Nintendo systems, but their first-party things are, the Legends of Zelda's, the Mario's. Those are their big moneymakers. So I don't see Nintendo doing that. Xbox, I think they're moving away from a console kind of market. So I think they're trying to do this Game Pass, and I think that they will eventually push to release Game Pass on, say, the PlayStation and the Nintendo. So I think Xbox will definitely move away from kind of the traditional concept of what a exclusive is as far as consoles, where you can play it. But I do think that they will have exclusives exclusive to Game Pass itself. And as far as PlayStation, it's really hard to say because I would normally want to say they'd be like Nintendo and they'd want to keep their stuff proprietary. But with Horizon Zero Dawn and there's rumors of Bloodborne going to PC, I don't know if they'll go release on other consoles, but I do think they're going to start releasing more on PC. So I do think that they're going to kind of move away from that model. But yeah, Xbox, I think, is probably moving into more like what Sega did, where they used to make consoles, and then they said, you know what, we're just going to make games, let other people handle the console thing. I think Xbox is going to do something similar, where they're going to say, okay, let other people handle the consoles. We're going to focus on cloud gaming and put that feature on other people's consoles. I think that's where they're going to go. Sorry about no audio. I guess I have audio. He's fixing it. Don't worry. All right, we got it.
Okay,
Might be our connection.
it's very spotty. It might be the connection. Duckwayne is somebody you know, right?
Yeah, maybe.
Thank you. All right, so as I was saying, yeah, Epic Games, they bought out a bunch of companies. I shouldn't say they bought out. They bought exclusives from a bunch of companies. One of the games is a game called Ooblets. It's made by a lady called Rebecca Codingly. Ben Johnson.
Ah, yes. Okay, yeah, I know him. High school friend. The grenade sniper, as we called him back in GoldenEye.
Yeah, she created a game called Ooblets, and they did Patreon, so people supported them, and sort of almost to the early access release date, they suddenly came out and say Epic offered them an exclusive deal, and that all their Patreon supporters would be. Wow, I didn't realize how distracting Twitch chat can be. uh,
Cover it up, cover it up. I'll watch the guy.
okay, and so lots of people were unhappy because they didn't want to use the Epic Store. Um, and Ooblets is not the only game. There was Control. There's a bunch of other games. If you go onto the Epic Store right now, you look at games that are upcoming, at least 2 out of 3 of those games are exclusives where Epic has said, please give us the right to this game. And for the next 1 year, the only people, if you want to buy the game, if you want to play the game, you have to do it on the Epic Store. Probably one of the most recent news is Rocket League, which is a very famous multiplayer game. It was on Steam, and on Steam you had to pay for it. I mean, it was about 10, 15 US dollars, and they decided they're moving off Steam and they're now on Epic Store for free. So all the people who wanted to play Rocket League, who paid money on Steam, now all the people who didn't want to pay money can play it for free on the Epic Store. Now, as far as these exclusives go, some people like them, some people have hated them, some people don't want to use the Epic Store. A reason behind that, and this is just a rumor, let me emphasize that. Epic is owned in part by Tencent. Tencent is the biggest entertainment, gaming. They do loads of things. Even in my other job in architecture, Tencent is involved there. They own a share in Epic, and sort of something to hit this home is that back in the day when one of the Blizzard Hearthstone streamers, he said, free Hong Kong, and Blizzard banned him immediately for life. And Epic was like, we would
Wait,
never
I thought it
do
was
that.
6 months.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, 6 months. 6 months. Thank you for that. And and then Epic came out. Tim Sweeney, who's the CEO of Epic, came out and said, "Oh, we would never do that." Then he said, later on, he said, "Oh, politics and gaming should be separate." So then people took that to mean like, "Oh, okay." Tencent told him, "Oh no, you shouldn't say that." So again, it's mostly rumor. Adam and I have a friend, Hans. We played Borderlands with him before. He refuses to open up an Epic Store account because of Tencent. He's a very pro-Taiwan democracy, and Tencent and other companies have to follow Chinese law, which states there is only one China. So loads of American people, loads of Western people have not opened an Epic Store. I mean, as far as my family is concerned, though, my brother's in England, my younger brother's in South Africa, they don't care. I have an Epic Store account. I'm not a big fan of their store because they've relied on exclusives, but at the same time, Steam itself does not have their function. Does not have Epic does not have the functions that Steam has. So when you go into the Epic Store, you can buy a game. You can now see critic reviews, but you cannot look at consumer reviews. You cannot see, people complain about hardware. You cannot. There's no forums. There are no refunds. Not an easy way like Steam has. Steam, if it's less than 8 hours, you get a refund immediately. Now, I may sound like I hate the Epic Store. I do not. I mean, I've got loads of games on it, and the Epic Store is great because they do offer developers get a greater share of the cut. So as a developer, you get more money when people buy games from the Epic Store, which means you can hopefully develop your game more, release more DLC, or work towards a second version of your game. Exclusives do give the developers lots of money. I mean, the game Ooblets, which is like Stardew Valley, they got somewhere upwards of $5 million US was the rumor. There is no confirmed amount. I mean, for 2 people, a husband and a wife, $5 million. They just had a baby as well. I mean, which is a lot of money that can sort of help you reach your dreams. Um, so I mean, TLDR, right? As is what they say on Reddit.
Yeah,
Yep.
too long, didn't read.
Basically, I think exclusives are good for the developers. I think they're bad for consumers. How to find a balance between the developers and the consumers and the platforms, that's something above my pay grade. I hope in the future that Epic and Steam and Uplay and Origin and good old games, I mean, there's loads of platforms, they can somehow find a way to all work together so that we cannot have to install 6 or 7 platforms on a computer to play games and make it easier for the consumer. Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no questions. You pretty much summed it up.
Oh, cool. And then Adam, we're gonna start it off with your news. If you got something exciting to talk about.
I do. It's very interesting. So you might have heard me mention previously the whole Microsoft saying that they didn't see Sony as a competitor. They saw their competitors going forward as Google and Amazon. Well, we've already known about Google Stadia. That's been out for a while. However, now Amazon has also announced that they are jumping in the ring with Luna, Amazon Luna. So Amazon Luna is basically going to be very similar to what we're seeing with Google Stadia. It's going to be very similar to what we're going to be seeing with xCloud, which is basically the Xbox streaming app. And basically the way it works is that you are not going to need a high-powered PC. In the future, what's going to happen is somewhere off who knows where is going to be a really high-level PC able to play 4K games at 120 frames per second or whatever, and that's going to stream to your, that's going to be streaming to your screen, and then you can play it from home. So this is kind of a model moving forward that a lot of people are moving towards, and now Amazon is jumping and throwing their hat into the ring. So what they're trying to do, though, is they're going to be a little bit different than what we've seen with Google Stadia and xCloud. Now, in Google Stadia, you pay for Stadia, and then you get all the games that you have. And then also, with you can also buy games. So you have whatever's on Game Pass. Sorry, I'm mixing up xCloud and Google Stadia. With Google Stadia, you can basically, they have some free games with the, I don't remember what they call it, Google Plus or whatever, but you have some free games with that. But then you can also buy games off their store and then own those permanently. Now, xCloud, they haven't, maybe they've announced it, I'm not quite sure, but I think they're kind of a similar model. Now, Amazon Luna, there is no purchasing of games whatsoever. It is only their package deal. You can only play the games that they currently have on available. However, what they're going to be doing differently is where Google Stadia has, I think they said something like 1,500 games, and xCloud has something like 200 games. Luna is going to be offering channels. So currently they only have one channel, that's Luna Plus. However, they will be adding a Ubisoft channel soon. So instead of paying for instance, going into the prices, Stadia is currently $9.99 a month, so $10 a month. xCloud is $14.99 a month. Luna is only $5.99 a month. However, you basically, I don't know if you have to pay individually for the channels or if you pay for one thing and can select a certain number of channels. But by doing this, you can basically subscribe to games that interest you. So, for example, if you enjoy platformers, then maybe there's a platforming channel. There's just a bunch of platformers on there. So then you're not having to pay for 1,000 games, you know, and including fighting games, which you're never going to play. You can only pay for 100 games, which are all games in the genre that you're interested in. So that's kind of a very interesting thing that nobody else has been doing, and it'll be interesting to see if they we see other people jumping into this as we go. Currently, they only have 50 games on their main channel, and there's only about 50 games on the Ubisoft channel. So unfortunately, there's not a huge variety as of yet, but there's definitely some growth there. What's also interesting about it is if you get their official controller, which is going to be $49.99 or $50, what you can do is normally, if I'm using, like, say, xCloud, I attach the controller to my phone using Bluetooth, and then the controller will go into my phone, and then my phone will contact the servers, and then it'll come back. Now, with Luna, if you have the controller will contact the servers directly as long as it has access to your Wi-Fi connection. So basically, you're cutting out that middleman, that Bluetooth middleman of talking from the controller to the phone, and you're just talking directly to the server. So this is going to help with latency a little bit and allow you to have a slightly faster work speed, basically, on your game. So that's a really, really cool thing. The other thing that's really cool about it is that it is not a traditional app. It is actually going to use a progressive web app. And what that means is that actually, whereas, say, like, if I have a game, normally you have a little app icon. The way Luna's going to work is it's actually just going to open up a browser, and you're going to be playing a game on the web page, basically, through a browser. And by doing this, they can bypass the Apple Store, because you can just access your page directly from the internet using your web browser. So they are bypassing the Apple Store, and they are not having to deal with any of the stuff that Epic has to deal with. And I don't really think Apple can really do anything other than, quite frankly, banning their website from their browser. So that would definitely be a huge issue. So they've basically taken Epic's problem and fixed it for them. So maybe Epic will adopt that in the future. We're not quite sure. But since we're already on the topic of Amazon, there is one other thing in the Amazon news that I'm going to cover, and that is if you have pre-ordered your PlayStation 5 or Xbox X Series, it looks like PlayStation will go up for a second round of pre-orders. Xbox, it looks like they're done, so if you didn't get it, you just have to wait for the first day. However, Amazon is now releasing emails telling people that their Amazon pre-orders of the Xbox Series X and the PlayStation 5 may not arrive on time. And what's even more alarming is they are not telling people when it may arrive. So even though you pre-ordered your Xbox Series X or your PlayStation 5, you might not get it on release day. You might actually end up having to wait up to a couple weeks to actually get it. We're not quite sure right now. But obviously that's causing a lot of people's distress, considering that the whole purpose of pre-ordering it is having it day one. And if I pre-order it and it doesn't show up for a couple weeks and I could have walked into a store and bought it before that, that is going to be very, very distressing. On a personal note, I know how that feels when Final Fantasy VII Remake came out. I pre-ordered it, but my copy had to be sent to the States, and then it had to be sent from the States to here, so I ended up getting it about a month after release. So I definitely feel those people's pain. So what about you, Crian? Did you find anything interesting in the news this week? Sure. Um, you know what? I probably would. I mean, I pay for I pay for Netflix, and I pay for HBO Go. Um, and we ended up dropping cable because of it. So actually, we ended up spending less on those two things than we do on cable. So yeah, I could definitely. I mean, I already kind of do that with videos, but also like for instance with the Xbox Game Pass. Now this isn't streaming, but with the Game Pass, you pay what? Like I said, $15 a month basically. Whereas with the PlayStation 4, a new game, you're going to be spending about $70. So if I can finish a game every 4 months, I'm actually spending less on something like Game Pass. So for instance, if you had say Luna or something like that, and I'm paying $5 or yeah $5 a month, you know, if yeah, I mean, if it has games that I want on it, absolutely. I mean, you'd probably end up saving money in the long run, to be honest. It does seem kind of counterintuitive. You're thinking like, oh, I'm paying every month as opposed to only choosing when I pay. But if you're the kind of person who's consistently playing, I definitely see that as a definitely a good option. My only concern would be latency, because when I'm playing on a local system, obviously there's no lag. It's very smooth. My internet currently is not that good. As 5G starts to become more common, maybe that can kind of pick up the slack. But then at the same time, as it becomes more common, you're going to have more users on it, and that's going to start eating up the bandwidth. So I'm definitely open to the idea, but I'll have to wait and see how it works.
Related to Adam's news. Today I'm going to be talking about Taiwanese news actually. It is the GeForce Now's release in Taiwan, in Kaohsiung. I was really excited when xCloud was released and GeForce Now was released. Um, and I mean, now Adam talked about Amazon Luna. Hopefully, Amazon Luna launches in Taiwan as well. That would be great. Because a big problem with a lot of these services is that they launch in America, they launch in typically the Western markets first, which is strange to me because cell phones and cell phone gaming are such a big thing in Asia. In general, you'd figure they would launch it here, and not to mention, I mean, we have affordable 4G internet and even cheaper 5G internet. People have proven Taiwan's 5G plans, unlimited 5G plans, are $10 cheaper than American 5G plans. So GeForce Now has launched in Taiwan. However, it is unfortunately only available with one cell phone provider or one ISP, which is in English it's called Taiwan Big Brother or Taiwan Dagada. And they are not the fastest internet provider by any means, not even the biggest ones. which I find very, very strange. I complained about this to Adam because I don't have as many opportunities. Thanks, Doc Wayne. uh, as I was saying, I don't have many opportunities to game. So for me, uh, gaming on my phone somewhere, like I mean, I'd love to play Gears of War, Gears Tactics for 20 minutes somewhere if I'm waiting between classes. And to me, that sounds like perfect sort of increase my gaming exposure without having to lug around my huge desktop PC or my Nintendo Switch with me, which is sort of more. I mean, the Switch small, I'll give it to you, but it's still obtrusive if you're sitting in an office or you're sitting in a classroom or waiting outside a classroom or waiting somewhere. When you pull out a Switch and people just sort of notice it. But if you're just using your phone, nobody's gonna be like, "What is that guy doing over there?" Um, so GeForce Now available. So the problem is, what I don't like in Taiwan, I mean, this goes back to the idea of exclusives as well, is that you have to use this company if you want to use GeForce Now in Taiwan. GeForce Now, I should have said this earlier, is a streaming platform. There's a free option. I think you only get to play 30 minutes a day. You get to pay money as well, and if you pay money, it's unlimited. They had a somewhat of a good start. They started with loads of games, but they had also a rocky start, uh, in the sense that they started with loads of games, but people were like, hey, we didn't give you authority to have this game on your server. So loads of games got removed from the catalog. There's still quite a lot available now. I'm hoping for more stuff to be available in the future. And it's something, and I really hope they expand it to the other two other major companies in Taiwan. So if you're a Taiwanese gamer and if you're a Taiwan Dagada subscriber, please keep an eye out for that. If you're listening or you're watching it later, please drop us an email at middleagedgaming2020@gmail.com. Let us know what you think about GeForce Now in Taiwan. I actually have to ask some other people, maybe they know it, and I'll hopefully report about it again in the future.
All right.
So,
Exciting.
what do you think, Adam?
So yeah, I mean, that's great. The news that we finally have it available now in Taiwan. We tend to get things really, really slow. I was waiting for HBO Go for over a year. They had commercials on TV, but it was always in Thailand, and it was never in Taiwan. And it's like, oh, come on, guys. So the fact that we're finally getting something, I think, is actually really great. So really happy about that. Now, I probably won't be using GeForce myself, but yeah.
Okay.
Too much money.
I'm looking forward to something. Whatever works in Taiwan, I'd like to give it a try. I tried Xbox Game Pass for a while, and that was, I mean, it's not a streaming service, but it was cool to have like a selection of games. So, we'll see what happens in the future. We're actually like super over time for the first time.
Oh, sorry about that.
No. Our longest episode yet. So it's interesting.
All right. Well, then we should probably cut it off, I suppose.
Indeed. Adam, we should mention that we're actually going to be streaming a bonus episode this week at some
Yes.
time. I haven't decided when yet. Adam's got a bit more free time.
It's going to be a surprise. But yes, it is in honor of we living in Taiwan. Moon Festival is coming up, so we will be having a special Moon Festival episode. I don't know if we're going to actually cover anything about Moon Festival, but that's why we're having it. So.
Indeed. And we're just going to it'll be an entirely gaming-focused episode. We're going to talk about games we're playing. Again, games maybe that you should look out for in the future, and old games that we have played that we'd like to recommend you. Because if you're a person like me, maybe not Adam, because Adam is just totally focused. I wish I was him. You're always looking for games to play, so tune in for the next episode. You'll at least get to hear 6 cool, interesting games, either on the PlayStation or the PC or the Switch.
You say focused, I say obsessive. All right. Well, anyway, thanks for listening. Let us know what your thoughts are on exclusivity. Are you for it? Do you think it's a good thing? If so, why? Or are you against it? And what do you not like about it? So feel free to leave those in the comments. And we hope that you had a good time today. And we look forward to talking to you again very, very soon.
Definitely. If you're looking forward to contacting us, please contact us at Gaming Aged on Twitter. That's the only handle we could get, unfortunately. Or Middle Aged Gaming on Facebook, or Middle Aged Gaming again on Instagram. Send us a DM on Instagram, or any way you want to contact us. We'd love to hear from you. And that will be it. Tune in this week. We'll announce it again on social media before the episode airs if you want to watch us live. Thanks again for watching, and we will see you guys later on this week.
Adios.